No one knew his name. They just called him the florist. 15 years in the same shop, same quietness, same kindness. But no one knew that. At night, when he was alone, Frank's hands trembled with memory. Red wire or blue wire? Wrong choice, death. Right choice, or life. And that day, after 30 years, he would make that choice again. This time, not wires, but words would be his weapon. Welcome to Nameless Courage. Before we begin this powerful story of silence, skill, and forgotten heroism, tell me in the comments what city you're watching from today. And if you believe stories like this need to be remembered, hit that subscribe button and help us make sure they are. The flower shop opened at 6 a.m. sharp, every single day. Rain or shine. Frank Martinez, 75 years old. Never spoke much. Signed the register with slow, deliberate movements. Last name only. Martinez. No rank, no greetings. Just a nod to the woman behind the counter. Then he'd walk those same quiet steps to the window display. Farthest corner from the entrance, away from the radio chatter and small talk. He wore the same thing every time. Faded blue work shirt, brown leather apron, baseball cap that had once been green but was now weathered gray. No patches, no slogans, nothing that would draw attention. His hands were weathered but steady. The brass watering can never left his workbench. He never brought more than he needed. Just tools, black coffee, and that quiet focus that followed him everywhere. The regulars called him Flower Grandpa. Half the neighborhood thought he was some retired handyman with too much time and a pension. They'd joke about how he only worked with roses and always left after exactly 30 minutes. But the shop owners noticed something different about Frank Martinez. The way he moved. Every step calculated, never wasted motion. The way he checked his surroundings with tactical precision. His eyes swept the shop methodically, entrance, windows, back exit, blind spots, like he was updating some internal security assessment. Something else, too, harder to describe. His gaze would linger not on the flowers, but on reflections in the storefront windows. Like he was reading patterns that weren't obvious to anyone else. Watching for things that might not be there, but staying ready just in case. He never rushed. Never wasted movement, never bent unnecessarily. Even watering plants seemed to follow some internal checklist drilled into him over years of practice. Most customers never noticed, but people who worked security, who had served, who understood situational awareness, they noticed, and they wondered. What none of them knew was that Frank Martinez had spent 15 years living with pressure most people could never imagine. 1985 to 2000. Staff Sergeant Frank Martinez, United States Marine Corps. EOD, Explosive Ordnance Disposal. For 15 years he had danced with death weekly. IEDs along the Mexico border, unexploded ordnance from training ranges, chemical weapons disposal, terrorist bombs in urban areas where one wrong move meant dozens dead. Each device was a puzzle. Different approach, different tools, different caution levels. Some were crude, pressure plates with basic timers. Others were sophisticated masterpieces designed by people who understood exactly how bomb disposal experts worked. The questions never changed. Red wire or blue wire, timer or remote, motion sensor or pressure trigger, blast radius, time remaining, civilians nearby, and always, hesitation meant death. Not just for him, but everyone within 3 blocks. Over 15 years, Frank successfully disarmed 247 explosive devices. Each number represented hours of controlled terror. Each success meant families went home instead of ending up in body bags. But Frank never thought about successes. His mind went to close calls. The device in Tijuana where he cut the wrong wire first. The car bomb at 29 Palms, where the timer malfunctioned. The mine in Mojave, where he identified the trigger with 15 seconds to spare. His final case, 1999. Downtown San Diego Federal Courthouse. Someone planted a device designed to bring down the structure during a trial. 3-hour evacuation. Frank worked for 2.5 hours, dismantling layers of triggers and backup systems. When he cut the last wire, the timer showed 4 seconds. 4 seconds between success and catastrophe. That night, he submitted retirement papers. Time to find something that created life instead of preventing death. Tuesday morning started like every other. Frank loved flowers because they represented everything bombs didn't. Growth instead of destruction, beauty instead of terror, life instead of death. Palmer's Flower Shop, downtown Denver. 5:45 a.m. arrival, 15 minutes before opening. Sarah Palmer always unlocked early for him. Some routines needed no explanation. Morning light filtered through storefront windows. Roses, carnations, lilies, daisies lined the walls. Earth and growing things filled the air with hints of floral preservative. Frank's routine: check overnight deliveries, inspect for freshness, remove damaged stems, refresh water in display vases, prepare special arrangements from overnight orders. Peaceful work, methodical, predictable, everything he'd wanted after decades of unpredictability. By 8:30, regulars had come and gone. Mrs. Henderson's weekly roses, young couple's anniversary bouquet, businessman's secretary birthday arrangement. Normal interactions, simple human connections Frank had learned to appreciate after years when conversation was a luxury he couldn't afford. 9:15 a.m. Frank was preparing a funeral arrangement. White lilies, baby's breath, greenery. Sad but necessary work. Flowers helped process grief. Front door chimed. Nothing unusual, but the footsteps made him pause. Too heavy, too deliberate. Nervous energy trying to look casual but failing. Frank moved quietly toward the front. Young man near the counter. Early 20s, hoodie pulled up despite warm weather. Hands shoved in pockets, eyes moving between register, door, and street. Frank recognized the pattern. In EOD days, nervous energy meant someone carrying something dangerous. Different context here, but same recognition. "Good morning," Frank said quietly. "Can I help you?" No immediate response. Still scanning, checking exits, shifting weight like someone running out of time. Then he pulled his right hand out. Black metal, compact grip, 9mm pistol. "Register," he said, voice cracking with stress. "Open it. Now." Frank's body didn't panic. No spike of fear, no step backward. 30 years of pressure situations taught him panic was a luxury he couldn't afford. Assessment. Young male, 22, inexperienced with firearms based on grip and stance. Standard pistol, probably loaded, safety unknown. Extreme nervousness, sweating, rapid eye movement, unsteady voice. Desperation or substance use, both making him unpredictable. Environment: 800 square feet, 2 exits, minimal cover, no immediate weapons accessible. Time factor: unknown, quick grab or escalation if cornered. "Sure," Frank said calmly. "Let me just—" Door chimed again. Young woman with baby stroller pushed through, fumbling with purse, speaking softly to infant. "Oh, hi, Mr. Martinez," she said cheerfully, not noticing the situation. "I wanted flowers for my mom's—" She stopped, saw the gun. Baby started crying. Everything just became significantly more complicated. "Get over here!" Gunman shouted, waving pistol toward the mother. "Nobody move!" Jessica Chen. Frank had seen her before. Neighborhood resident, bought flowers for family occasions. 28 years old, graphic designer, 6-month-old daughter Emma now crying loud enough to attract street attention. Frank watched Jessica's hands shake as maternal instincts fought self-preservation. Comfort baby or escape gun? "Please," she whispered, "don't hurt my baby. I'll do whatever—" "Shut up! Get away from the door!" Frank's second assessment. Situation deteriorating. Inexperienced criminals with firearms exponentially more dangerous than experienced ones. Emotional decisions instead of calculated ones. Add crying baby and panicking mother, violence probability increased dramatically. But Frank noticed something else. The gun grip was wrong, too high, finger positioned incorrectly, stance all wrong. No range time, no formal training. More importantly, his desperation felt different from typical robbery motivation. Clean clothes, new shoes, not drug habit stealing. This felt like someone out of options making bad decisions under pressure. "Son," Frank said quietly, using the tone he'd used with nervous Marines. "Take a breath. Whatever's going on, this won't solve it. You don't know my situation. You don't know what I'm dealing with." Frank nodded. "You're right, but I know this isn't the way." Gunman looked between Frank and Jessica, trying to manage two people plus crying baby, inexperience showing. Professionals would have crowd control plans. This kid was improvising, but no one in that shop knew that. 3 blocks away, 3 black SUVs moved in convoy formation through downtown Denver. 12 former Marines, Frank's old EOD unit, in town for annual reunion. One had decided to surprise Frank at his flower shop. Back inside, "Look, son," Frank continued, steady and non-threatening. "Whatever you need money for, there are other ways. This path doesn't end well for anyone. You think I wanted this? You think this was my first choice?" Frank saw the tactical scenario playing out. Multiple variables requiring careful management to avoid casualties. Variable 1. Gunman. Young, inexperienced, desperate, but not necessarily violent. High probability of talking down if approached correctly. Low probability of intentional harm, high probability of accidental harm if escalated. Variable 2. Jessica and baby. Civilian non-combatants, highest protection priority. Jessica intelligent but emotionally compromised. Crying baby both complication and asset, drew attention but humanized situation. Variable 3. Environment and timing. Mid-morning Tuesday, moderate foot traffic, shop visible from street, police response, 4 to 6 minutes non-emergency, 2-3 minutes armed robbery. Variable 4, his capabilities. No recent combat practice, but muscle memory and awareness intact. More importantly, experience managing high-stress situations where lives depended on right decisions. Solution becoming clear. Gunman needed to feel successful without actually succeeding. Jessica and baby needed removing from danger. Everything without escalating to violence. "What's your name, son?" "What? Why?" Rather talk like human beings than calling you kid in my head. Hesitation. "It's Danny?" "Okay, Danny. I'm Frank. How much money do you need?" "I need whatever's in the register." "That's not what I asked. How much do you actually need for whatever you're trying to solve?" Danny's gun hand shaking. "My mom. Losing her house. Lost my job 3 weeks ago. Mortgage company won't extend. Need $1,200 by Friday or foreclosure starts." Frank nodded. "Now we're getting somewhere." "Danny," Frank said carefully, "what you're doing, even if it works, won't solve your problem. Steal a couple hundred from a flower shop, you're still short. But now you're also a federal criminal. Robbery with firearm is federal, FBI, serious prison time." "I don't care," Danny shouted, but his voice suggested otherwise. "Yes, you do. Because if you go to prison, who helps your mom? Who gets a job and finds real solutions?" Jessica had picked up Emma, holding her close, keeping quiet. She was starting to understand this wasn't typical robbery. The old man was actually helping everyone. "Here's what I propose," Frank continued. "I'll give you 200 from the register. Not because you're threatening me, but because I want to help you start actually solving this. Then you put that gun away, and we talk about resources that might help your mom keep her house." Danny stared. "Why would you help me? I'm robbing you." "Because 30 years ago I was a young man who made bad decisions when scared and desperate. Someone helped me instead of calling police. Now I'm passing it forward." Frank moved slowly toward register, hands visible. Jessica, take Emma to the back room. This is between Danny and me. Jessica hesitated. You'll be okay? I'll be fine. After Jessica disappeared, Frank opened the register, counted $200 in 20s, placed money on counter between himself and Danny. There's your money. But before you take it, understand something. This isn't robbery anymore. This is me helping a neighbor in trouble, which means we solve this the right way. Danny looked at money, then Frank, then back. I don't understand. Put the gun away, Danny. It's not helping anyone. And that's when everything changed. Because outside Palmer's flower shop, 3 black SUVs had just pulled up. Danny slowly lowered the pistol, staring at counter money. You're really just giving this to me? Lending it, Frank corrected. Big difference. You're paying me back once you're on your feet. How do you know I won't disappear? Frank smiled first time that morning. Because you're a good kid who made a desperate choice. Good kids don't disappear when someone helps them. Danny was processing this when the front door opened. Tall man entered. Broad-shouldered, leather jacket despite warm weather. Gray hair, military posture, eyes immediately taking in the scene. Danny with gun, Frank behind counter, money on countertop, obvious tension. Frank Martinez, the man said quietly. Frank looked up, expression changing completely. Recognition, surprise, concern. Tommy Richardson, what are you doing here? Looking for you. We're all in town for reunion, thought we'd surprise you. Tommy's eyes flicked to Danny and gun. Looks like we're interrupting something. Danny confused and panicking again. Who is this guy? Frank, who is this? Danny very carefully put that gun down on the counter, Frank said. Right now. Why? What's going on? Because the man who just walked in is former Marine gunnery sergeant who's been in more combat than you've had hot dinners. If he thinks you're a threat to me, this conversation takes a very different direction. Tommy hadn't moved from door position, but Danny sensed the room dynamic had shifted completely. Whatever authority Frank projected was nothing compared to quiet intensity from this arrival. Gun on counter, Danny, Frank repeated. Now. Danny complied, setting pistol down, stepping back with hands visible. Tommy relaxed slightly but stayed by door. Frank, want to explain what's happening? Community outreach, Frank said dryly. Danny's having financial problems. We were working out solutions. With firearms involved? That wasn't my idea. Tommy assessed Danny with years of threat evaluation experience. Son, how old are you? 22, Danny mumbled. Know what I was doing at 22? Danny shook head. Fallujah, keeping Marines alive while people with more experience than you tried killing us? Know what I learned? No, sir. When someone like Frank Martinez tells you to put your weapon down, you do it immediately and consider yourself lucky he's giving orders. Frank intervened. Tommy, it's handled. Danny's not a threat. Just a kid who made a bad decision. Your call. But Frank, we can't just walk away from this. Not asking you to. Let me finish handling it my way. Tommy stepped aside as door opened again. 2 more men entered, same military bearing, taking in scene with practiced eyes. Everything all right? One asked. Marcus, Jim, Frank nodded to each. Meet Danny. Danny, old friends of mine. Danny was understanding he'd walked into something much bigger than simple flower shop robbery. 3 men moved with coordination, suggesting years working together. They positioned themselves to control space without making it obvious. Frank, said Marcus, 9 more of us outside, should we? No, Frank said firmly. Private conversation. Danny and I are finishing up. Jim stared at Frank with something like disbelief. 15 years we've been looking for you. 15 years. Know how hard it is to find someone who doesn't want to be found? I wasn't hiding, Frank said. Just living quietly. Same thing, in your case. Marcus looked around flower shop. This is what you've been doing? Flowers? It's peaceful work, Tommy laughed. Staff Sergeant Frank Martinez, the man who disarmed more IEDs than anyone in Marine Corps history, is arranging bouquets for suburban housewives. Danny's head spinning. IEDs? Like bombs? Like bombs, Frank confirmed. Long time ago. How long? Danny asked. Jim answered. Frank retired 2000. Before that, 15 years explosive ordnance disposal specialist. Best EOD Marine the Corps ever produced. What's that mean? Danny still confused. Tommy explained. When there was a bomb needing disarming, they called Frank. He spent decade and a half deciding which wire to cut while other people's lives hung in balance. Saved more lives than you'll probably meet in your lifetime. Frank clearly uncomfortable. Ancient history. No, it's not, Marcus said. You saved my life, 94. Tijuana border incident, car bomb, shopping district. You worked that device 3 hours while I was trapped in blast radius. I remember, Frank said quietly. Tommy owes you his life too. Kuwait, 91. Unexploded ordnance. So does Jim, Rodriguez, Chen, Davis. Tommy counting fingers. Frank, 12 Marines in Denver this weekend. Every single one alive because of decisions you made under pressure. Danny looked between Frank and Marines. You guys came just to find him? We come to Denver every year, Jim explained. Same weekend, same hotel. 15 years hoping Frank would show up. But we never could track him down, Marcus added. Until yesterday. Tommy's daughter looking for wedding florists found Palmer's online. Owner mentioned employee named Frank Martinez, who was veteran. Tommy smiled. Worth checking out. Frank shaking head. Should have called first. Would you have agreed to see us? Frank considered. Probably not. That's why we didn't call. Danny had been forgotten, but now spoke up. Mr. Martinez, Frank, you really defused bombs. It was my job, Frank said simply. For 15 years? For 15 years. Danny looked at gun on counter, then back at Frank. And I was threatening you. With a gun. You were scared and desperate, Frank said. I've seen scared and desperate before. Makes people do things they wouldn't normally do. But you weren't scared. Frank considered this. I was concerned. For you. For Jessica and her baby. For everyone who might get hurt if this went wrong. But scared? No. Takes more than one inexperienced kid with a pistol to scare someone who spent 15 years defusing terrorist bombs. Tommy grinning. Danny, you just tried to rob the calmest man in Marine Corps history. Frank once disarmed car bomb while I watched from 50 feet. Never broke a sweat. Because sweating interferes with fine motor control, Frank said. When cutting wires, fine motor control is difference between success and failure. Danny picked up the $200. I can't take this. Yes, you can, Frank said. You'll use it to buy time finding real solutions for your mom's mortgage. And you'll come back next week helping me with heavy lifting. Consider it first installment on paying me back. You'd trust me to come back? Danny, 30 minutes ago you were pointing a gun at me. Now we're discussing your mom's mortgage. If I can trust you now, I can trust you next week. Marcus, still shaking head. 15 years of flowers. Good work, Frank said. Honest work. Peaceful work. Don't you miss it? Jim asked. The adrenaline? The importance? Frank looked around his shop. I spent 15 years where people lived or died based on decisions I made in seconds. Every day, families either got phone calls saying loved ones were coming home, or visits from chaplains and commanding officers. He picked up a rose. Now I work with things that grow instead of explode. I help people celebrate anniversaries, birthdays, graduations, help them mourn losses and express love. Frank looked at Danny. Sometimes I help young men figure out better ways to solve problems than pointing guns at people. Danny quiet for a long moment. Mr. Martinez. Frank, I'm sorry. Really sorry. I know you are. That's why you'll be okay. Tommy clapped Frank's shoulder. So what do you say? Dinner with us tonight? Whole team's here. Rodriguez, Chen, Davis, Williams, all of them. They'd love to see you. Frank considered. Will they want to spend the evening talking old war stories? Probably. Will they want to drink too much beer and get sentimental about good old days? Definitely. Frank smiled. All right, but I'm buying first round. Deal. 6 months later, Danny returned with his mother, Elena Morales. Small woman, 50s, nurse's uniform, exhausted from double shift at Denver General. Frank was closing when they arrived. Mr. Martinez, Elena said, my son told me what happened, what you did for him. Your son made a mistake, Frank said, but he's a good kid. Good kids deserve second chances. He said you were in the military. Long time ago. My father was Vietnam, Army. Never talked about it much, but always said hardest part of coming home was figuring out how to be useful again, how to contribute. Frank nodded. Your father was wise. Danny said you might know about resources for our mortgage situation. Frank smiled. As a matter of fact, I do. Veterans Administration Program for family members of service personnel. Your father's service might qualify you. And local credit union specializing in emergency loans for healthcare workers. He handed Elaine a paper with phone numbers. Start with these tomorrow. Tell them Frank Martinez referred you. Elena looked at paper, then Frank. Why are you helping us? Because that's what people do for each other, Frank said simply. That's what community means. 6 months later, Elena's house was out of foreclosure. Danny had job at local auto repair, and he still came by Palmer's every Saturday morning helping Frank with inventory and deliveries. Reunion dinner with Frank's old unit became annual tradition. Every year, 12 Marines gathered in Denver sharing stories, remembering fallen comrades, celebrating that they were still here. And every year, Frank Martinez returned to his flower shop Monday morning, ready to spend another day helping people celebrate life instead of dealing with death. So now I ask you, have you ever met someone like Frank? A veteran who never bragged, never boasted, just stood quietly, carried history in his hands, and let time forget until someone remembered? Have you encountered someone who chose to build up instead of tear down? Someone who found purpose, not in glory of their past, but in quiet service of their present? Say their name in the comments. Share their story. Let others know who they were before anyone noticed, and who they became when they thought no one was watching. Because at Nameless Courage, we believe the most powerful stories don't shout. They wait. They wait for someone wise enough to notice, someone curious enough to ask, someone brave enough to listen. Thank you for watching. If this story touched you, subscribe, share, and help us keep these voices alive. We'll see you in the next one. And until then, if you ever see an old man in a flower shop, arranging stems with military precision, working alone in comfortable silence, take a moment to really look. You might be standing next to someone who spent years defusing bombs so other people could come home safe. You might be standing next to a hero who chose flowers over fireworks, growth over destruction, and quiet service over loud recognition. Real heroes don't wear capes. Sometimes they wear aprons.